Our music stand usually stands there, and we put one day a quarter showed up, we don't know where it came from. And she goes, oh, look at this. So every Sunday now, when we sing, we would put a quarter there.
Hey, supplemental income.
I gotta get paid.
Car wash quarters. I love
Yeah, I got it. I need to buy bubble gum. So.
Oh, you're gonna start something. You know that.
I think the first
This
quarter
was
was one of those quarters from like a
It was like a play
school,
quarter.
Plastic quarters.
Yeah.
Because of the
Gotcha.
day.
Here you
had-
go. Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah. But then we put real ones on.
Nice.
So I think we're going to get started. I'm going to check to see who we have on the line here. Is it just you, Chuck, still?
I didn't hear anyone else jump on.
Okay. So we have Chuck George on the line, Katie, who you know. And we thought we'd have a few more people here, but we still have an opportunity to tape this and put it on YouTube. And so hopefully we'll get some stimulating questions here from the audience.
No pressure.
No pressure. We have to come up with some good questions. So, Katie, if you would just maybe do a quick introduction of yourself. Maybe you can cover a few things you didn't in the first broadcast.
I'm not that exciting.
A few more factoids would be appreciated.
Okay. Well, my name is Katie Jackson, and I grew up in Ohio and took the long way to Lancaster and then to Ephrata. So I'm happy to be here. I don't know. I don't remember what I said about myself before. I don't know what you want to know about me that I haven't already said, but I started out my professional career as a youth minister and did that for a total of about 9 years, and left that to go to seminary and fought tooth and nail every step of the way, like most people do, that I was never going to be a pastor, and I was never, ever going back to school, and never going to seminary, and it all worked out just like I planned. That's why I'm here. I have a cat. I always talk about my cat because he's awesome. Dr. Niles, Crane, noted psychiatrist. I feel like that's really important that people know about my cat. If you're a cat person, you understand it.
It's really important.
It is.
I'm surprised we haven't seen pictures yet.
Oh, he's so cute. I'll show you. He's a Blue Point Siamese, so he's beautiful. I have an older sister who's been married for almost 12 years now, and she has 3 kids, a girl that's 10, a boy that's 9, and a boy that's almost 5. So they all live in Ohio, very close to my parents, so I've been happy to have the opportunity to be back since last October, doing some interim stuff at my old church, and then kind of finding ways to pay bills there. And I've had the opportunity to reconnect with the older 2 and kind of connect with the youngest, and that's been a lot of fun. And my grandparents, I still have 2 living grandparents, and they live close, so of course I didn't get to see them much when I was here in Lancaster, so that's been fun to be kind of part of my family again locally and not just over the phone. I like drag racing. My favorite driver is Larry Dixon. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but he is now like retired or something, but 3-time world champion, top fuel drag racer. So, I don't know what else next. I don't know. Help me. You know more about me than I do.
Okay. Maybe I think it's interesting, we didn't cover it in the first set of Q&A sessions. Maybe a little bit about what attracted you to Bethany. You mentioned that you were excited about it, but what dimensions, facets, unique qualities did you see or know about in Bethany that was interesting to you?
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So the first thing that I think is fun to know is that I had a really great time in my phone interview and then in my in-person interview. I had so much fun interviewing that I didn't think that was a thing that would ever happen to anyone ever, but fun job interview, very good sign. 2 fun job interviews, very good sign. But what I really thought was interesting about Bethany, even just the profile, it seemed like, and I was hoping it was representative, like it was a good representation of the congregation. And from what I've seen, I think it really was. that you all are very interested in welcoming more people, not just numbers wise, but different people that are different than you, people that need a church home.
Speaking of welcoming, I think that meant that our one caller hung up, so we're now back in the waiting room.
Oh,
I was gonna say, it sounds like wait music.
I'm just gonna turn that down real low. Is that gonna be disturbing to you? Can you hear
not
me?
that it's not now that it's continuing, that's fine, but.
Okay.
We're good.
If somebody does beep in, we'll hear that, and I can bump up the volume, but
Okay.
rather than just hang up on them and think if they do dial in that there's nothing going on,
Right,
we'll just let it be
okay,
quiet.
then I don't need to talk into this, do I?
You do not.
Okay. So anyway, I was really excited about Bethany's profile and what I read in it. And I actually saw the posting a couple days after it was posted last April, but I was not approved for ordination pending call until September. So actually, when you're not approved yet, they won't release your profile and you can't apply anywhere. So I had months of painful watching, waiting for it to be on hold and then, pulled from the UCC website, but thankfully that didn't happen. So I was very happy when I could finally email the conference and say, send them my stuff. But I have, there was confusion about the small snippet information, and one of the things that was mentioned before someone figured out that what was on the website, it talked about art, so that piqued my interest, and I know that you have a history with a particular member doing art in the hallway. Yeah, so that, of course, for my sermon today, if you saw it yet, that interested me. I really like the Lancaster area. I didn't know how much I would like it, but one of the things that I love about it is it's just so beautiful. And the part of Ohio, I'm very almost to Indiana, Ohio, and it's all flat, and you drive out in the country and you count the steeples, and it's just, it's pretty, I guess, but it's flat, and so it's just different, and I love the idea that, and I think I said this before, I love the idea that if, you're having a bad day, and I like to just drive around, that you just go drive around, and it's just gorgeous, and that's refreshing, just, get that perspective. I love the proximity to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, as one of the reasons that I came to Lancaster. And one of the other things about Ephrata is that I'm close enough to Lancaster. I was in youth ministry for 9 years, and 7.5 of those were at the same church, which is kind of I know, Janet, you're your own person with this 30 years business, but that is very, very weird and atypical. Awesome. Awesome, but very atypical. So staying at a church that long as a youth minister is very rare. I like to go somewhere and dig in and stick around, and one of my main reasons for staying in the Lancaster area is because now I know people, I feel like I have a support system, so I feel like I can stick around long term. That I've seen the results, the fruits of that kind of commitment, and I don't really see another way to do ministry well. So that I'm excited about. I'm so impressed by the welcome that I've received. I know as a candidate, you're supposed to make us feel welcome, but it hasn't felt forced, and I really appreciate that. It's not like y'all are trying to figure out how to make somebody feel comfortable. It just happened, and that I'm really excited about, and that's something that I think you guys offer to the community that's probably kind of unique.
Extravagant and radical.
Yep.
And you're not lying about it, and you're not just saying it, and that's a big deal. That's a church I want to be a part of. So I think you have a great youth program. I think you do.
We do.
All I can do is this.
That's fine. So of course, as a professional, educated, experienced youth minister, that is part of the church that I really care about, but it's also not something that I necessarily want to have to do in addition to, you know, pastoral stuff. And so I'm really happy that you not only have someone here, but you have someone who's been here for so long and is competent and good at their job and passionate about their job,
And the kids love her.
and that's what matters. So that's exciting. I like the aspect of the daycare. That'll be new for me, but that's okay. I love having kids around, so yeah.
Have you gotten in any traffic jams?
Have I, like, since I've been back, just that 222 thing this afternoon? I forgot about it, but I'll tell you, I mean, my parents live out in the country. Like, I forgot about like Monday afternoon traffic when I came today, so I didn't leave early enough, and because I just thought, well, it took me this long yesterday, no problem. Well, no, yeah, that is not an issue where I'm at in Ohio, traffic, unless it's a tractor. We're behind a tractor jam, and that's
Horse and buggy.
yeah. So okay, yeah.
So I'd like to give the opportunity for our special guests here tonight. Thank you for coming. Do you have questions you'd like to pose to Katie or things you'd like to talk about? It'd probably be best if it came up so that we could capture the question good and loud on the microphone, if you don't mind. If you do have, if you don't, you can say yes.
A few questions.
Okay. Yeah, come on up, Margaret.
Uh-oh, she wrote it down.
That's all right.
Trouble now.
Margaret chairs the oversight board for the child care program,
Oh, okay.
among other.
I'm required to.
Right.
She's on board of Christian Ed.
Right.
Oh, you know, I'll say real quick while you're walking, that was another thing. I was very excited that you have a good choir.
We have a fabulous. Our choir's
And you-
great.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sing it for me.
I did.
It's probably good we didn't, that we aren't going out.
Yeah, it's good.
With the Carnegie Hall.
Oh.
I thought about that earlier today.
Yeah.
I thought, man, I'm glad we didn't commit to that and then start fundraising for it. And
Yeah.
Okay, I have a few questions. As a prospective new minister in our church with the size of our congregation, which will be something probably new to you, what are some things that you can bring to our church that'll make us excited? Because I used to be a teacher and my student teachers would bring really neat things to my classroom, and maybe what are some things that we might need to be supportive of you as you go through maybe your first year or two.
Okay. Can I answer that part first?
Sure, whichever you like.
So you should all know, people watching at home, I am incredibly introverted. Very, very high introversion level. So in case you're unfamiliar, to me that means talking to peopling. It takes energy from me, and I need to have time away to recharge, and I can get depleted, and then that means I get grumpy and nobody wants to be around me, and I don't want to be around me. So, being one thing that I think I bring with, even though I'll be a new minister, is all this experience that I do have working full-time on a church staff. I work very closely with my senior pastor, who is in, I think, her 28th year now of ministry, and 10th year at my church in Ohio. So I think it's weird because it isn't like I'm totally new at working at a church.
What was the size of your congregation there? Similar to here?
It's about an 800 member church, but I will, with the caveat of Ohio Conference membership and funding guidelines are very different than Penn Central, so it doesn't hurt anything to keep people on your rolls for a long time. So, what I will say too is, since I started there in 2009, they were at like 803 when I started, and they're at about 780, 790. So it's fluxed. That number has fluxed, but their attendance is maybe 150 a week for 2 services. But they've got 40 kids in there on a like a weeknight for youth group and stuff. So they're not quite comparable. But yes, this is definitely smaller membership, but the town is only about 3,000 people, so it's, Ephrata is much bigger than that. So it's different size and stuff, but, and I was support staff.
Do you live, or will you be planning to live in Ephrata?
Yes.
Or like in Ephrata?
That is the goal. And there are places, there's not many places that will take my cat. He is the problem.
I know a good apartment if you need one.
What'd you say, Mary?
I know a good apartment complex.
Good to know. Let's talk. But yeah, I think it's really important. The first 6 months that I worked at my church in Ohio, the full-time one, I was still living with my parents because I couldn't afford to move out at the time. I stayed for about 6 months with them to save up money, and I couldn't believe how much better I was at my job and how much easier it was and how much more fun it was when I didn't have to commute a half an hour. So, and you get such credibility when you are actually part of not just the church community, but the community. And again, I want to stick around, so any sort of buy-in that I can have is really, it matters to me. So
my next question's about the daycare.
yes.
We meet once a month, and usually the minister attends that.
Mm-hmm.
But then a lot of times 2 or 3 or 4 or more times a month, we end up having to have quick meetings or emergencies come up, like children get hurt or parents report things that aren't accurate or things like that. That Pastor Robin and Pastor Bill in the past have really had to step up and help us. Like I'd be on the phone, help. How do you feel about getting a call in the middle of the day and you had other plans, but you might have to end up coming to a meeting about the child care issues?
Well, I mean, that is the nature of ministry from my experience of, getting called into the school because there was something happened, there a car accident or something. But I mean, that's part of my responsibilities to support the daycare. So
right. And we've had some issues, and the workers became close with Pastor Robin, so sometimes they would go to him. He kind of had an open door policy with them that they could come and talk to him if they had issues. So I'd say that's probably going to be the challenge, and also understanding the financial end of the daycare.
Right.
And now with this pandemic, I have no idea what's going to happen with that. At this point, we're in good shape, but as the months go by, I don't really know.
Right.
What's
So
gonna
I
happen.
would say there's obviously holes in my experience and holes in my knowledge with the daycare and how that ties in. My church hosts a daycare, but they just rent the room, and they pay their rent, and we leave them alone, and they leave us alone.
Right.
So this is a different setup for me. But what I would ask is that you help me learn, that we would have an open communication, and you would feel comfortable with me asking questions. But as the pastor, I'm also a learner.
Right.
And what I would want to be is supportive in a healthy, professional way for you and for the staff. And I feel like I'm approachable. I hope that I'm approachable. And, I'm also, I have some humility around what I know and what I don't know. So what I would want to be is not a problem for the daycare.
And my very last question is, as a seminary student, or when you were going to the theological seminary, and in your experience around Lancaster County, have you come across the term open and affirming churches?
Yes.
So I guess what I'd like to know is, maybe can you explain a little bit in your own words, and how do you see the relevance in that to Bethany?
Yeah, so my field ed, my second year of seminary, was at First Reformed downtown in Lancaster, which is an open and affirming. Officially, they have signed up. So open and affirming is a process that you go through as a congregation to educate yourselves, to learn, about yourselves, about the congregation, and about communities that you're trying to welcome. And the UCC it's a multi-year process. It's not something I've ever gone through. It's not something I've ever led a congregation through. There was, when I went to Synod last year, I was a delegate, and so when you go to Synod, you get assigned like an issue that you're going to deal with, and the issue that I was assigned was a question of whether there's a group of churches called Faithful and Welcoming that are, I'm trying to be diplomatic, they do not, for the problem that I have with them is that not only do they not support LGBTQ clergy, but they actively work against the ordination and authorization of LGBTQ clergy. And that's a line for me personally, just because people that I know and love are in that community. So, so my issue was, were they allowed to have a booth in the exhibit hall? There's always, an exhibit hall at the Synod. So it was super contentious, and as you could imagine, everything else was fine, no other issues, but ours actually came to no resolution and got kicked up to the board of directors at the national level, and I'm sure they haven't touched it since then. But all of that to say, I have no problem with a church becoming open and affirming. That's a process that I would love to lead because I think it would be fascinating. However, I also know that not everybody is on board, and it can be a very contentious issue. And it's not something that obviously I'm here, so it's not a deal breaker. It's not something that that label is not something that I'm so concerned about, because there are enough churches I could have gone elsewhere if that was an issue. My church in Ohio is not open and affirming. They actually had a memorandum that the council passed that they would not allow, and I think it was in the early 90s, they would not allow same-sex couples to have commitment ceremonies or marriages, because it wasn't legal yet in the sanctuary. And they also said they would not allow the minister to officiate those kinds of ceremonies. So right before I left, we had a gay couple that the one was a lifelong member of the church, and he had found his person, and they wanted to get married, and we all kind of knew eventually it was going to happen. So the pastor initiated these conversations. I don't remember how many they had, but book studies and workshops and conversations all around this issue, just to get rid of the no same-sex marriages in sanctuary. And the biggest reason for that too was the passage of the marriage equality in the Supreme Court in 2015. That was the biggest kind of push for that. And they passed it. It was almost unanimous to get rid of this old statute that they had passed. And I think they lost maybe one family. And there was some push for a time to just go for it and go open and affirming, but the desire to keep the community whole outweighed any of the desire to make that big move. But what I would guess, I'm just guessing, because I don't know where you stand on that, but I don't know what anybody thinks about it, not a lot of you. What I don't do is do things behind closed doors. I don't try to enforce my opinion or push my opinion on people, and I don't sneak around. So if open and affirming was something that we wanted to talk about, we can talk about it. But it's the congregation's job to make those kinds of decisions and make those kind of moves. It's not going to come from me.
So you're willing, like if there was an issue that people were interested in, and you were in your mind, you're thinking it should go a certain way, but the congregation didn't feel that way, it will be more important for the whole group to be happy then.
I think there's a limit to, but like with open and affirming, I support it but you know, there's also issues around it. And,
Right.
But I mean, I don't know if you wanted the men and the women to sit on opposite sides of the sanctuary. I might have a problem with that, you know, something like that. So what I don't want to do is say, no, it's all your decision, because, you know, it could happen where, no, I really need to pick a
Right.
side. But,
Right.
I mean, you all have been here longer than me. I'm not even technically here, but y'all have been here longer than me. It's your church. So it's your, you know, I want to be a part of it, but it's not for me to say, I'll, you know, dictate what I think you all should be doing.
Thank you very much for your answers.
Oh, you know what? I missed your first question. What do I bring?
Yes.
I think I'm pretty passionate. Sometimes I don't. I couldn't care less about things that a lot of people care about, but if I care, I'm really passionate. I think I bring energy, and I bring a lot of authenticity, and I think I'm hilarious.
Well, you have Pastor Robin, Pastor Bill, and our former interim Pastor Steve, who all had a little humor in their
Okay,
sermons.
well,
So you have.
I usually have to pull back because I'm trying too hard to make people laugh. But
We
you know, working with kids, you've got to have definitely some humility.
Mm-hmm.
So I
true.
think I'm good at that, and try to, you know, keep myself where I should be. But excitement, I'm very committed. Like I said before, this isn't like a 2-year thing for me, and then I'm going to go find something else.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask
Alright.
if the virtuoso on the speakerphone wanted to ask a question. So I'm going to hang up the phone because it's
Okay.
obvious that we don't have anybody
Right,
online.
right.
And that fixes that distraction. Any other questions or comments? If you'd come up to the mic.
That's all right. We've got time. No worries. Take your time.
Well, let me preface my question first with, undoubtedly you're a very good person because you've earned the love of a cat. And I find that cats are very good judges of human beings and character.
Nice.
Margaret and I love our cat.
Oh.
My question is, there's been several times with some of the ministers in Bethany that I felt sort of not uncomfortable, but out of place because of my political views. I'm a very conservative Republican.
Okay.
And several of the ministers and I have had some heated conversations, and basically we agreed to disagree. Do you plan on preaching politics from the pulpit?
So what I would say, I can't say no, never, but I think everybody has a different idea of what is political. So I can't say, no, I will never preach anything that you would view as political. I come from a very conservative area in Ohio, so it's not like I'm, you know, I've never encountered people with different views. But what I said yesterday, I still maintain that regardless of what we may agree or disagree on, and I'm not making any assumptions, but whatever we may agree or disagree on, I always want to talk about it. I always want a conversation, and if I ever said something that you didn't agree with or offended you or made you feel marginalized or othered, I would really appreciate knowing about it. So my faith comes before any of my political views.
Okay.
But I mean, I can't, like I said, I just can't say no, I'll never be political, because, you know, things that I don't think should be political, some people think are political.
Okay.
Is that a fair, I mean, is that a fair?
One of the instances was, and I'm not pointing any fingers, but after the last election, the minister had a consolation class for the Hillary Clinton fans.
Okay.
Now, had Hillary won, I wonder if the same thing would have been done for the Republicans. And
Right.
that made me feel very uncomfortable
Okay.
coming
Okay.
to church here, to be truthful with you.
Okay.
And I didn't think it was appropriate at all for the minister to take a side like that.
That's fair.
Especially in the, if you'd have gone out, stood in the street and done it, that's one thing. But to do it in the sanctuary, that's another thing.
Okay.
Okay? Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, come on up. Sorry.
I have to sing it. Oh, gosh. I better go prepare. I was just curious, just following up with my question yesterday. We were talking about like the styles of worship.
Yeah, yeah.
I get a sense sometimes that, how do I put this? I get a sense sometimes that some congregations seem to think that in order to appeal to our generation, and I'm saying our because you graduated college 2 years after me,
Oh, okay.
that there needs to be like this, modern service. And I loved what you said yesterday. I really think we're going to collaborate well on doing like a blended thing. I'm really excited about that. My question is, what are some of your ideas in order to draw maybe a younger demographic into Bethany? I personally believe that I'm looking at a church based on what that church believes and is that church open, and that's one of the things that I love most about our church.
Right.
So how do we kind of like get the word out there that this is an open place where people are welcomed? Because I've heard from some friends, that they have kind of turned away from faith because they don't always feel kind of welcomed or accepted. So I'm
Right.
wondering just what your ideas are about that.
Okay. So I have a very inconvenient answer that no one is going to like, and I don't like it. I wish it was easier, but the statistic is I think 86% of folks that come to church are come to a new church for the first time are invited by a friend or relative. I am not capable of dragging people through those doors. What I think you have to offer is fabulous, but the how do we get the word out, I think we talk about it with people we know, and I know as a child of non-religious people in a non-religious family, both sides, nobody goes to church. None of them go to church now because I wasn't really open, and especially when I worked there, that would have been a little weird to have like my parents sitting there. But I'm guilty of the not welcoming too. I think kids are really good at inviting their friends to something that they enjoy, and I think as adults the stakes get higher, and we don't like to put ourselves out there as much. So that being said, if we work to continue to figure out how, if we can get people through the doors, how to make them feel welcome, I think that like welcoming first-time visitors, because I've seen really interesting ways and I've seen really terrifying, scary ways that I wanted to walk back out of. But I think what is really important when we talk about welcoming young families, I get it, you want younger people here, you want your congregation to grow, you want it to survive, but with younger people comes different challenges. Do you want, I haven't been here with kids, I haven't worshiped with you with kids in here. Do you want screaming babies in this sanctuary? Do you want kids running around on a Sunday morning because that is what you are going to get? With youth around, and with my experience working with kids are loud. They want to talk to each other. They want to play games and run around, and and there are consequences when the choir is trying to practice in the chapel and we're running around the big square hallway playing our flashlight tag game, and the kids are standing there screaming right by the door. There's consequences, there's changes that come when you shift a demographic. So, not to be like cliche or anything, but I would say be careful what you ask for, because those are things that are going to happen. Whatever you, you know, I've seen the not nice looks at people when they bring their little baby in and the baby starts crying, and yeah, it's super distracting, and it's very distracting when you're preaching, but you know, I'll get over it. But I don't think it's fair for congregations. It's not just Bethany, and not a lot of people have really said a whole lot about, you know, the young families or anything. But I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's a good plan to think that the age of someone is what, you know, the age of the people that we get in here is what is going to save us. Mm-hmm. And to put the existence and the survival of a church on kids that are going to grow up is not a good plan. And as for like worship and modernizing and all of that, what the church offers that not a lot of other places offer is the community and a place to belong. And even if it's not the best and brightest and the flashiest and the most exciting, well, that's pretty, you know, that's not the stuff that lasts. The people that are going to come through the doors at Bethany are the ones that want to find a connection, and those are the ones that are going to stay if they can find a connection in the community here. So I don't think, I mean, in my one interview when I was here, we talked a lot about that sign, because that sign's not going to bring anybody through those doors. I mean, it's not. Nobody, who cares? Sorry, I'm sorry. I know it's not a popular opinion maybe, but let me boil it down in my mind here. I get rambly because it's
okay.
It's church growth is complicated. If it was easy, we would all be huge, and there'd be just, you know.
If you weren't nervous, it wouldn't mean anything to you.
That's
so
true.
It's totally,
That's true.
Totally
well,
fine.
what I worry about is not communicating clearly, because I have, like, you know, 1,000 thoughts about all of this.
Yeah, sure.
As one of those young people that was going to save a church, we got to get a young pastor in here, because that'll bring all the young people in. Well, I am not that exciting, okay? Sorry, I'm just not. But what I think is what makes a church grow, what gets people in the doors, regardless of their age, is that connection and those relationships, and that's hard. So one of my jobs as a pastor is to extend that invitation outside as much as I can. And that's, you know, I've got to see my very extroverted pastor from Ohio. I got to see her in action, and she doesn't care. She'll invite anybody to anything. And she's always like, you know, make sure you invite them to church. And I'm like, I'm not guilting anybody. You know, I don't want to make people feel bad. But I got to see my demographic of my youth group shift from the popular kids with, you know, great home lives, they grew up in that church, shift to the kids that were they didn't have anywhere else to go. And in our very small town, weren't really accepted for who they were. And a lot of that welcome for me kind of came naturally. I didn't realize it, because I was just like, great, a kid that needs a place, bring them in. But when people can see, what we need to figure out is how to extend those invitations, and when people can see that there's a community that will welcome them and wants them to be here, even though that change of another person is risky and it changes things, you know. But all of that is really hard, and I wish I had the silver bullet that does not exist.
Well, I thought what you said was great, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Thank
then,
you.
okay.
Thank you.
It's work. I've got a lot to learn, but we've got work to do. So, yeah.
Margaret, would you come up and do it through here, just so that we can capture that? Sorry to make you.
That's good exercise for me.
He just feels trampled.
What I wanted to say is, when you talked about you were 16 and you went to church with your neighbors, and I have a grandchild who's 11, has never been to church except when he was little. We brought him a few times. That gives me hope that somewhere he's going to find a friend that'll take him to church. I just worry about, I worry about him so much. But that gave me a lot of hope to hear you say that. It really did. So keep up that good work.
So I didn't ask a question, but I'll add on actually to what Amanda said and to what you're saying, Margaret, is that one of the things that the search committee, this is search committee propaganda to some extent maybe, but one of the things that the search committee heard from the profile that was created based off the input from the Bethany members was that they were looking for someone who was interested in the area, wanted to be integral to the community, and was interested in being somewhere where they could make a difference and be the pastor that the church needed and wanted. And I think it touched a lot on a few things that were brought up here. But one of the things that the search committee really saw in Pastor Jackson were those attributes. And it wasn't just because she said that, she demonstrated it through her previous experience, getting involved, being engaged in the community, joining organizations and the library board, things like that are how you get out there and meet people and engage them and talk to them and have a conversation, and maybe you argue with them, but you are becoming a part of the community where you can engage people, let them know who you are, what Bethany is, how you are touched and influenced and inspired by the Word of God. And those are the things that are going to help, I think, regardless of the style of service, who's singing, how we're singing, that kind of thing. That's what's going to bring people. And that's sort of what I was hearing Amanda ask and Pastor Jackson talk about. And those are the things that are engaging people beyond the sign out front that says welcome. So I just wanted to kind of reinforce that I think that's one of the things that was really encouraging to us about Pastor Jackson and her performance in the past, which was beyond just the profile, was seeing her actually demonstrate that in her previous experience. And I sat back down and I probably should ask any other questions or comments. We have a little bit more time, and we don't have anybody on the phone, so I apologize for no phone-in questions, but we don't need to talk if we don't need to, but if there's any other things that should be mentioned or you'd like to pass on, we have a few more minutes.
I thank you for welcoming me here. I'm so glad that I finally got to come back. I know. And what I would say, the other thing that I wanted, Margaret, right? The other thing, because you asked the two questions right at the beginning, and I always have a lot of thoughts, and not a lot of them get out of my mouth. But what I also, what I want in a church is to feel supported as a pastor and as a person. Like I said, I'm introverted, and sometimes I get shy. Sometimes sometimes it's kind of overwhelming to go talk to a bunch of new people, and I get a little anxious and stuff. And so what I would ask of the congregation is that you give me time to settle into this new role. I haven't worked at a church since 2016. I mean, I was the intern and I did CPE, but I guess that's not true. I did an interim for about 4 months back at my old church because the associate pastor was having a health issue, but she's the one that got hired after me. So she was out. So I was back doing my old job, which is very weird to go back and do the same thing after you've had this life-altering seminary experience. But it was awesome. It was fun because I knew it wasn't long-term, and I could, we could have fun, and I could do what I wanted. So it was a great experience, but it just reaffirmed for me, like, no, youth ministry full-time is not for me anymore. But this pandemic and all of the racial violence and Black Lives Matter movement stuff, all of the news that weighs on you, has also weighed on me. And I would love to get started with as little baggage as possible, but I have some trauma now with everything going on. People that I know have been affected by COVID-19, and I've not been doing what I feel like I'm meant to do. I've been assembling transfer cases at Honda now. It's just so sad. It just, it's sad because I hate being miserable. It's not where I saw myself. I thought after seminary I would, be ready. I'd get a church quick and I'd be in there. So I'm kind of coming off of this rather unexpected sort of, I don't want to say traumatic, that sounds a little bit dramatic, but I've not had an easy time since graduating seminary. So what I would ask from you all is that you help me learn what you need from me, help me to do a good enough job to stick around.
Is there any type of a mentoring program that the Mentors of Christ has that you could be mentored by another minister anyway?
I don't know that there is a program. However, I have a very, very good, positive, mentor-ish relationship, like with my pastor in Ohio, that I said she's in her 28th year of ministry. I'm also friends with Ed Dickel, who is the chaplain at Ephrata Manor, and what'd you say, Lonnie? I love him. He was a member of First Reformed when I was there for my internship year. He and his family, and I'm their cat sitter for Pete the cat. I go visit Pete the cat when they're out of town, so that's fun. That's important. But so I already have that connection, and I preached 2 Ash Wednesdays ago at Ephrata Manor. He invited me to preach because he was going to be out of town. So I do have that, and I do know some other ministers in the area, and I'm generally not afraid to ask for help and advice. So yeah, I'm not aware of anything formal, but I definitely would not be opposed. So that's a good, I'm going to look into that. I think that's a good suggestion. Right. Okay, I'm going to look into that.
Good. Well, thank you, Pastor Jackson. Thanks for coming out this afternoon, evening, and thank you for your questions. So we'll wrap it up, and I appreciate everybody taking your time tonight.
Thank you all.